What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your best friends here at First Seed Sports. We are back with another video. Except this time we're changing up our format a little bit. Usually we are all about the starts and sits, our bets of the week, but fantasy season's over, fellas. And I don't know about you. I've spent the week crying. Not too much though, because I was wiping my tears with all that championship money. You know. But anyway. So we are going to take a look back at the end
That was
of the
good.
fantasy season and look at some of the best players from the fantasy season here. We're going to go through some of our different superlatives, I guess you could call them, for the season, like our fantasy bust, fantasy surprise, a couple other ones we'll throw in here and there. But before we get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Underdog Fantasy, our sports partner, our sports betting partner. You guys can sign up right now with the code FIRSTSEED, and you can get a free 100% deposit match up to $100 when you make your first deposit. All right, so get on there, throw some money. It's a great app. We all play. We're all very frequent. I got to brag a little more. I just won a best ball for a season-long best ball, so
Nice.
it was great, But all right, let's get into it. Kyle, kick us off with our first graphic here. We're going to kind of just go a little discussion-based and, just kind of feel out the crowd here a little bit. So I'll open it up. Whoever wants to talk about the biggest bust of this fantasy season, go for it.
All right, well, I'll start off because I'm heated about this guy. Calvin Ridley is my bust. As someone that picked him in the third round. Now, don't get me wrong, right? We're gonna talk about busts here. The other players obviously played a full season and didn't play to their expected, result. But with this guy, man, I mean, Calvin Ridley. You drafted him, you're expecting at least top 10 quality. So the fact that after week 7 in an 18-week season, I don't hear from him again, I could just drop him, and there's not even I couldn't even get he injured something in practice, or he had some family. It's just personal reasons. You know how it makes me feel when I put money into an account and I trust you and I invest into your play and I get rewarded with, you know what? I'm gonna sit out. The rest of the season. You guys got it. So that's why I got Calvin Ridley as my pick.
Okay. So I hear that. I'm going to join in right now because I was a victim of the Calvin Ridley step away. I drafted him in the second round, full PPR league, and it was a great first few weeks. He wasn't even reaching his potential to start the year, but he was doing enough. I'm saying Kenny Golladay. This is someone that I didn't draft at all and still did way lower than what I thought he would have at least got to. So you talk about Calvin Ridley being a bust. Let me get these numbers correct here. If I'm mistaken, in PPR, Kenny Golladay only had 12 more points than Calvin Ridley on the season. That is insane. He played 8 more games. It doesn't make sense. He is my surefire bust. I understand the argument about Ridley. I'm kind of hurt by it too, but Kenny Golladay, that man will never see my fantasy team, even though he even did it. But he will never see it as long as he's in the league again.
Listen, that stat was kind of crazy with the 8 games, and I can't lie. That's a great it's a great point. But I think for me, it's the fact that your second round pick, dude. You know how important that is. Your first 3 rounds, you got to be like, all right, I need at least 15 every week from you guys for the first 3 picks. So the fact that you did get that type of production the first quarter of the season, but to miss that for the rest of the year is such a big part. If it was like a Kenny Golladay, 5th, 6th round pick, that would be a little bit, you know what I mean? You could work with that a little bit, but to miss out on Cooper Kupp, to miss out on depending on where you pick them, you could miss out on I'm missing out on
It's a lot of guys.
Yeah. There's so many people. I know it's at first, but there's so many people you could take at that second round that can give you that production.
All right, Kyle, one more on the board. Go for it.
I was going to butt in and say my vote is Allen Robinson.
I'm with you.
And basically for the same points you guys made for each of your guys, except for Calvin Ridley's mental issues. But you drafted Allen Robinson higher than Kenny Golladay, and he finished lower than Kenny Golladay. And quite honestly, I think Calvin Ridley won you more games than either of these two combined in the 5 games that he played. But so basically, Allen Robinson, I mean, you drafted him. He went ADP 11th receiver off the board. Finished the season as the 83rd receiver. Playing 11 games, he scored 9 points less than or more than Calvin Ridley. And compared to last year, he balled out, but he had 90 less targets and like 800, 900 yards less. And it was gross. And I think it came week 4 where you were finally like, oh, I have to sit this guy. But you couldn't because you were like, I drafted him in the 3rd round. But you couldn't bring yourself to, and he probably lost you more games than you needed to. And for that, Allen Robinson is my pick, and I would guess the same reasons that he is Zach's pick as well.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. And Kyle, you even kind of look back at last season, which is where I was going to focus. Thinking about this season, would you guys be happy with Diggs, Deontay Johnson, Keenan Allen on your team? Would you say yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a wide receiver too, for sure, right?
Right.
Well, that's what you were drafting Allen Robinson expecting this year, because last year he finished with 262 fantasy points in PPR, which would have put him right in that range of wide receiver 7, 8, 9 with those 3 guys, Deontay, Stephon Diggs, and Keenan Allen. And then this year, like Kyle said, I think Kyle might have had standard numbers. I'm looking at PPR here, and he actually finished as the wide receiver 86 in PPR. Behind guys like Devin Duvernay, Olamide Zaccheaus. Let me see. Henry Ruggs finished ahead of him. Even guys like I'm looking at Jalen Guyton, Zach Pascal, like so many guys that you wouldn't ever dream of drafting in that 3rd, 4th round range where Allen Robinson went this year, finished ahead of him. And I think that just kind of quantifies him as the bust that he really was. Personally, I didn't have a lot of expectations for Kenny Golladay going to New York. I thought he kind of chased the money on that one, to be honest. And unlike Dante, I do feel for Calvin Ridley and his personal reasons or whatever it is. So I think it has to be Allen Robinson personally, but that's just me. So,
right.
So do we want to put it up to
it's
a vote?
personal, but like, let me know, bro. Put money in you.
Right,
let me know. Just tell me. We can work it out. Yeah, I'll talk to you, bro. Let's talk it out. I just want you on that field catching TDs. Please.
All right. Well, is there a change of heart from anyone here? Can we come to a consensus agreement on anyone?
I will say quickly, without counting Calvin Ridley in this pick, between Golladay and Robinson did have the higher expectations. So I definitely think that it could go either way with him and Golladay there. So my vote's kind of split, but
okay.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm not picking Golladay is because he was one of my like untouchable lists. Drafting him, nothing to do with him. So like for him to be a bust, it was kind of expected.
And remember, he was hurt coming into the season too, so that automatically kind of put a stain on him. I mean, if he fell to me where I was happy taking him, I would take him, but it was not fun owning him.
Right.
All right. Well, I think the 3 of us. Go ahead, Dante. Sorry.
No. I'll take Ridley out just because I don't know. We don't know what's going on with him. So in a serious note, I hope everything's well with you, man. If you're listening to First Seed, holler at us. But if we're if there's anything you need to talk about, we're always here for you. In regards to that, though, I gotta go with Allen Robinson just because the ceiling was way higher for him. I know Kenny Golladay was, he wasn't going into an offense where they had Saquon and other weapons, but that offensive line, until they get the offensive line straightened out, besides Andrew Thomas, who's my guy, they can't move the ball any forward. So with that being said, Allen Robinson, and the problem with Allen Robinson was the fact that the other receivers were kind of doing well too. Like Darnell Mooney was doing better than him. They had another wide receiver. He's quick. I think he was playing like the slot. Yeah. He was getting a production some games. So I really can't think of an excuse why, unless there was an injury that we didn't know about, I can't think of an excuse why Allen Robinson really didn't perform to his quality this year. So I'd give the nod to him if I had to.
All right. Well, I mean, it seems like we're kind of consensus on Allen Robinson there, but we're not going to leave it at that. For all of you who are watching, and we know you are, all right, go ahead and actually down in the description on this video, you guys can find a poll where you guys can vote on who you think was the biggest bust of the season. So go find that and tell us, vote on why we're right or why we're wrong. We're looking forward to seeing the results. All right, Kyle, let's go on to the next one here.
Next slide.
All right,
Biggest surprise of the season.
Yeah, we're going to flip script a little bit here, and we're going to look at not necessarily the bad, but the good. I feel like maybe we should have almost had this one first, but I guess we got to lift our spirits after
yeah,
that.
Start low and then go high.
All right, so you can see on the screen here, we have Lenny Fournette, we have Deebo Samuel, and we have Cordero Patterson. So between the three of them, let's discuss. Go ahead.
And I know Dante had a fourth that he wanted to mention, so I'll let him start there.
Oh, you know what's funny? I'll mention it, but I'm actually going to change my answer. The original person, the other person that we're bringing up was Jamar Chase. Obviously unexpected. We knew he was going to be good, but we didn't expect him to break the all-time, first season receiving record. So with that, I still got to go Deebo as my pick. Personally, just because of when he was getting picked, ADP he was wide receiver 36, and he finishes the third. I mean, that's ridiculous. And his workload actually diminished when he took that running back role. I feel like if they focused more on, they just left him at the receiving role, he could have gotten way more catches for PPR, so that's more points there, and he could have just got more opportunities with with touchdowns with that. That being said, yeah, I have to. It's tough because Jamar Chase just really spazzed. Like, just to be blatant about it, he spazzed this year, and with weapons like Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, people that like are volume receivers that you also would want on your team, to stand out in a group like that, I have to at least give Jamar Chase flowers for that. But my pick, if you had to ask, just because of where Deebo was picked and where he ended up, I have to go with him.
Bold claim, Dante. It's one of those things, like, if you had gone Jamar, I don't think any of us would have faulted you, because it's still an enormously large leap that he took. I mean, we expected good things, but not great things. But in terms of surprise, I feel like it's hard not to be most surprised at Cordero Patterson. I mean, I don't think this guy was even mentioned in draft rooms on fantasy drafts. He was probably like a dude that showed up the day before week 1 that you were like, oh, I remember this name when he was drafted in the first round 10 years ago. But I mean, I don't think the Vikings drafted him to be the RB1 for the Falcons, 6, 7, 8 years after. And I don't think he was third on the depth chart for Atlanta to start the season. I remember picking up, what's his name? Wayne Gallman, because I thought he was going to be the next big thing in Atlanta, because people were drafting Mike Davis, but ended up being this wide receiver running back stud. And I think that's why he's a surprise, because you could throw him in your flex running back receiver position and be happy. So truthfully, to go from 0 mentions to, I don't know, the RB7 on the season, 14th receiver of the year, I think that's biggest surprise of them all.
Right. No, I'm going to tag along. I can't even say too much other than what you just described about him, but I was in 7 leagues this year, and he was drafted in 3 of them, and one of them was a dynasty startup, which you draft everybody at a dynasty startup. So that's kind of what gave this one to me. I mean, you never thought that this guy coming into the season was going to have a big significance in that offense. Calvin Ridley there, Kyle Pitts there. They just brought in Mike Davis, gave him money. There was just no expectations for him at all. And I will add, what Debo and Lenny did this year was unbelievable. Nobody really expected them to take that extra leap, but they did. And I want to point out that Lenny had 69 catches this year. That man did not do he was not known for his hands. He was not known for catching the ball, and he did make a huge leap in the passing game this year, which was obviously a main reason for his points. But I'm going with CP here.
Man, I knew I should have highlighted that 69 receptions.
Yeah,
because I remember typing that up and being like, that's really nice. But I completely missed it when checking these through. Might have swayed my opinion, but I'm still going Cordero.
I think I'm on board with Cordero as well. But I'm actually just going to speak on Lenny's behalf here. Just him finishing as a top 5 running back is absolutely insane to me. When you were drafting guys like Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, to name a couple there, you just expected those guys to be the top 10 guys, not a guy like Leonard Fournette, who realistically we didn't even know whether he was the starting running back in this offense or not. I mean, the playoffs last year kind of gave us a little hint that
playoff Lenny.
Yes, he's playoff Lenny. Yeah. So that kind of gave us a little hint that he was going to he was going to be the guy here. But I don't think any of us could have imagined the magnitude that he showed up this season, especially in those late run weeks, weeks 10, 11, 12, 13. He was scoring 20, 30, 40 points a game in those games. So I think I like what he did this season. I don't necessarily know that he gets my nod for biggest surprise here. I think that has to go to Cordero Patterson, just based on the fact that, like you guys said, he wasn't drafted at all. These other two guys, Debo and Lenny, were both drafted. So I'm going to go with Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, I know no one's rooting for Lenny on this, but the reason why I would temper or not say that Lenny is a surprise is because of his usage in playoffs. The surprising thing with Lenny was just his workload in the passing game. The fact that Brady was just dumping, I would watch some of their games and there were possessions where he'd get 3 dump offs a possession, and that's 3 points right there on top of what he can do just with the ball on his own. So he's going to rise up in the draftings next season, but I'm still going to go with Debo just because it wasn't even he already established that he was a good receiver in the league, but the fact that they utilized him in that offense the way they did, I mean, I can't really think off the top of anyone that's ever been used to that extent. So that's why I have to give the nod to Debo. Obviously, where he was picked and where he landed too is a surprise, but yeah, I'm gonna stay firm on Debo. I just wanted to get people, the last person to think about in this topic is Debo, so we get the votes.
Agreed. And I mean, I think that if I had told you, what receiver this season is going to break into the range of Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek, Diggs, and I told you Deebo Samuel, I don't think any of you guys would have believed me. But I mean, he was right there. He had 306 fantasy points this year, so he was a stud. All right. So what's our consensus here? Who are we feeling? I think
it's 3-1
Patterson.
Debo, so I think rules for that means that Lenny gets the vote for the 4 of us.
Oh, okay. It automatically goes to the guy number 4. All right. Well, either way, we'll what's the saying? We'll agree to disagree on that. But you guys can prove us wrong. Again, down in the comments, vote on your choice. Whoever you think is the biggest surprise of this fantasy season. All right. Next one, Kyle. Let's do it.
Look at it.
All right, Mr. Reliable. Okay, the key here is that we are looking for a couple key things. All right, we are looking for one, the guy that you could always count on to be consistent in a fantasy matchup for you, and 2, the guy that going into a Monday night matchup, the guy that is going to get you that however many points you need. Obviously not 60 or 70, whatever it is, but if you need 15, 16 points, he's going to get you those points. So who is your guys, Mr. Reliable?
Okay, you want to go?
No, go
getting my
for it.
guy
Go
right
for
now.
it, because I'm still conflicted on this.
All right, I'm gonna go with Cooper Kupp. I don't even think this is really an argument here. He is on pace to break two, not one but two wide receiver records. Granted, it's an extra game, and he's already acknowledged the fact that he's not going to feel like that impressed by it because it's an extra game, and a lot of people are going to break records just based on that fact going forward. But the usage, we knew, like he even when Goff was the quarterback, Cup was always getting those touches when he needed to. And with the reports of when Stafford came in, he and Cup would like watch film together and hang and throw outside of practice. That just gave more confidence for me, at least, to invest in Cooper Cup, just because I already knew he was going to get that workload. I was surprised. If anything, I was surprised other wide receivers didn't benefit as much as he did, like Robert Woods, before he got hurt, obviously. But yeah, he's having one of the best wide receiver seasons ever. So you can't really. How can I not say that's reliable if you're gonna post a historic season like that? You know.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I really don't have much to say on this one. I mean, you're looking at the four guys on the screen right now, only four in the league with Derrick Henry, who only played 8 games, that averaged 20 points a game. You're literally looking at him. If you had one of these guys, I guarantee you made fantasy playoffs at least. So, I mean, all of these guys were really reliable. But Cooper Kupp, man, what a season. Like, there's nothing else I could say. He absolutely balled out. There could be an argument said, which I feel strongly about, that obviously I still think Devontae's the better receiver when it comes down to it. I think Cooper Kupp definitely benefited from basically no teams had film on these guys this year. No one knew what Stafford was going to come in and do this year with Cooper Kupp. So I think he benefited largely from the system this year. And I do think he retains this and stays as a top 3 next season and probably going on as long as he has Stafford and McVay together. But yeah, Cooper Kupp, without a doubt. There's nothing else I could say. I'll leave it at that.
I am going to differ. I'm going to go Devontae Adams. And the one point I can think of that is swaying me in Devontae's direction is because of week 1. If you were to go, you drafted Devontae to be Mr. Reliable. So you went into week 1 as you're Mr. Reliable, where week 1 with Cooper Kupp, you couldn't rely on him. But Adams, Devontae, you were like, all right, yeah, 20 points. Thank you.
I bet some people didn't even start Kupp in week 1.
It's possible.
What?
I mean, you
so?
drafted him. You drafted him to start him. I think where he was drafted, he was kind of automatically there. But
you really think so? I think
there's
coming into the season, he would have been the 2 in LA behind Woods.
Yeah, that's also a great point. Don't forget that there was a huge motion in the fantasy community that this was Woods' year to take over. That was the thing.
PPR guy, the reception guy, like.
I thought he was going to get both. I mean, they both can eat. I mean, metaphorically speaking, you like Cooper Kupp has always been that guy that's like the slot receiver guy that'll get like 8. Like he'll have those games where he has like 8 to 12 catches a game. Like I kind of if Cooper Kupp was always like, to me at least, I didn't expect him to go crazy like this, but like I expected him to be like a top 20 wide receiver for sure.
I think it's a little bit of recency bias. I mean, not just on you, Dante. I think it's for everyone. Like kind of imagining life before Cooper Kupp broke out, but I thought that he was a guy that you could maybe get a 20 or 30 point game out of a couple times a season, but like not every single week he was going to be putting up these numbers that he is. And I think one of the reason why, like you said, why can't they both get fed is just because Matt Stafford has typically been a guy that feeds one receiver. He's usually has a favorite and he goes to a favorite, like Calvin Johnson, Kenny Golladay. Even the years of Golden Tate before Golladay popped on the scene, like he always has his guy, and I expected it to be Woods. That's kind of why, I didn't think anything of Cooper Kupp. And personally, I don't know if I would have started him week 1. But that also could just be the bias that I had against him. At this point, I'm starting him, obviously.
What made me think No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember in draft season the one thing that I was a big Woods supporter, but I saw somebody say that we hadn't seen Cooper Kupp play a football game without Jared Goff, and that alone made me think that could be the only reason that man is successful. I mean, not to say that he is, he clearly isn't, but that was like, oh, that's a good point. But obviously that was wrong, and Cooper Kupp is just a dominant monster of a receiver. But that was why people were I loved Woods regardless. But people were like, oh yeah, we hadn't seen Kupp with a different quarterback. What could this even look like?
I'm definitely not arguing against his production whatsoever.
No, not at all.
I guess just for argument's sake in this, I'll look at the 2 running backs. First, I guess I'll look at Austin Eckler. And I think that his Mr. Reliable argument comes based out of his PPR prowess. He is guaranteed receptions in basically every single game he plays in. I mean, his low on the season was 2. But other than that, he hit 3 maybe once or twice. And then he was 4, 5, 6. Even had a game of 9 receptions against Dallas really early in the season. And, what's that?
And they lost that game.
They lost. Yeah, you're right. They did. That was at SoFi. I think I remember. I watched that game. It's I think Eckler's like I said, I think his reliability is really in his PPR PPR point scoring. Whereas on Jonathan Taylor on the other side, took the league by storm with his rushing this year. And I think had Derrick Henry not gotten hurt, we would be having this discussion about Derrick Henry too, maybe even instead of Jonathan Taylor, because as great as JT is, I mean, I think he and Derrick Henry are very much the same running back in my mind. I know they're a little different style, but they're both these huge on the ground yardage guys. And, if Derrick Henry came out and put up 2,000 yards in a season, you're going to be like, oh, Derrick Henry, he did this. And you're not necessarily going to look at Jonathan Taylor. And I think maybe Taylor was benefited from that a little bit with not having Henry there to steal the show this year. Because, there was the stat floating around that Derrick Henry was still the rushing leader after not playing for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5, whatever it was, but ultimately Jonathan Taylor stole the show and he became the number 1 running back and the number 1. I think he's the leading rusher in the NFL right now. Is that correct? No,
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, by a mile.
And I mean, he was just rolling off games of, I have him 145 yards, 107, 172, 116, 185, 143, 170, just crazy games. But I think where he faltered on being Mr. Reliable was, unfortunately, in the playoffs and the semis and in the championship. He kind of disappeared. So that's where he loses my vote, unfortunately.
My note about
I'm pissed, man. I'm pissed.
Wow.
I gotta get it out. No. I'm just pissed because Kyle, we gotta talk about this. We gotta air it out.
Let's do
it. I originally thought I was finessing Kyle with this trade to get Jonathan Taylor. I forget what the details were, but I ended up getting Jonathan Taylor from him in the middle of the season. And of course, I just want to complain about this. Of course, I meet him in the semifinals. And of course,
after you claimed the first round, the first seed, with the bye, you were coasting. You were just like, easy. I got the week off, and then I get to play.
And I was talking shit too.
Yep, you're like, I've got your Jonathan Taylor. You're going down. This is my league. I think you were. You even changed your team name. You claimed the title already.
Yeah. So I just had to get that out. I'm just get that out.
And then Mr. 10-point Taylor comes across Thursday night with 10 points, and I don't even know if you scored more than.
Oh, I gave you Kamara. And Kamara dropped
Yeah.
like 20-25 on me. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, man. I just can't catch a break. But it was fun while it lasted.
It was. Oh man, that was fun. It was fun
Yeah.
seeing you just dominate.
Yeah, do not underestimate the results of a reverse jinx. Don't do it. Too many times we've seen it firsthand this year.
Yeah.
But
That being said, let me just
go ahead.
let me ask you guys this, and this is just like going back to Mr. Reliable. If Derrick Henry, let's just say Derrick Henry didn't get hurt and he played the rest of the season, and not obviously he was going crazy and he could have still like been doing that, but let's just say he averaged like, I don't know, 15 and 20 points, same as usual, business as usual. Who from this list is getting knocked off?
So if you're asking me, it's basically Derrick Henry from last year added to this list.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I probably Eckler. The only reason I would vote Eckler, if I had like 40 votes, I'd throw like 5 to Eckler among these guys. Is because Eckler Monday night I was down 20 and he came up with a 40 bomb and I won. So it was just like cool. I see him score once and I can turn the game off because I know he's going to score 3 more. So he was my personal Mr. Reliable. He also had I think he was one of like 4 or 5 guys who had just one game of under 10 points. But aside from that, I think among this list, I'd put Henry above him.
Yeah, I would agree too. One of the points I was going to make too is Derrick Henry also almost tied his season high in receptions. His season high ever was 19 set last year, and he had 18 this year. So if you gave him that end stretch, that playoff stretch, where usually he's like historic for showing up like at the end of seasons in playoff time, give you a nice 40 bomb, 30 bomb. He's done it how many times now? If you would have given them that double receptions from his career high, I mean, we might even be comparing him to Cooper Kupp right now. So, I mean, that was a big loss this year. You talk about fantasy heartbreaks. If you had Derrick Henry on your team this year, I feel like more than anybody, that was the biggest heartbreak loss this year.
This may not be a hot take, but No, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you guys.
No, it's all right. Go ahead. I'm all in for the hot take.
Derrick Henry is, if he isn't your first round pick in all of your drafts next year, like I feel like the guy's missing. He's missing so much just because you're getting that receiving work. So you're essentially getting like a 250 like rock solid Christian McCaffrey. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to get as hurt as much as Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, to me, I wouldn't even pick him in my top 5, to be honest with you. I know that production is there, and that's risky. That may be even more of a hot take, but
yeah,
it's all injury, and I know that's something that you can't pin down and you can't put like analytics behind, but like sometimes you just know in your bones, like, listen, man, you're gonna give me like 4 weeks and that's it. And he's been doing that for he did that this season and last season. So that's all I want to say. I'm taking Derrick Henry first round. All my drafts, I'm taking him next year. That's the plan.
He's coming back. He's already designated to return. The only concern I would have had for Henry was returning from injury, but if he's going to be playing in the playoffs,
he's supposed to play this week too, I believe.
Yeah, he'll help them make a playoff push for sure here.
So Dante, to go back to your original question about which of these guys would I replace, I'm going to go a little tinfoil hatty here, and I'm going to say Jonathan Taylor, just because Derrick Henry does play Jonathan Taylor twice in the regular season. Okay, follow me. This is a long path we're going on here. All right, and in the first, he did play Jonathan Taylor once this season. Tennessee and Indy played once in week 3. And in that game, Derrick Henry had 144 all-purpose yards. Okay, he had 113 rushing, 31 receiving. All right, and in that game, Jonathan Taylor only had 64 rushing yards. So I think that Derrick Henry is, 1, he kills the Colts, and 2, puts the Colts into a negative game script where they're playing from behind, which negatively affects Jonathan Taylor's rushing yards, meaning that during the season, he's going to have 2 down games against the Tennessee Titans.
What week did they play?
You guys follow that? Week 3.
What week?
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's the only reason I disagree with that is because the Colts offense really didn't give Jonathan the keys to the kingdom until like midseason, and that's when you really saw him in his midseason form, I'd say. That's personally
Week 1.
Was he spazzing week 1?
Week 1, he had 56 rush yards and 60 receiving yards. So he was over 100 in week 1. Week 2, he dipped back down, but that was against the Rams with Aaron Donald and company. And then week 4, he went right back up to, he was at 114 all-purpose yards. Then he just went off from there.
No, yeah. What about, so when I say he went off from there, maybe it wasn't them giving him the workload. Maybe it was just him like just blossoming as a player. But I'd love to see this version of Jonathan Taylor go against like whatever Derrick Henry was doing before, to just give like a more accurate. Because I don't know. I just feel like, I mean, Nyheim Hines was more in the offense in the beginning of the year too. I just feel like if you gave them both the same level of attention, I can't say who would win that argument. I mean, obviously both their defenses are in play too, but I'm curious to see, just because JT gets that receiving work, and Henry does too, but JT is like that's his thing. So
Fair enough.
yeah, I give the nod to JT still, but we're talking like that much of a difference.
All right. Well, let's wrap up Mr. Reliable here. Again, I don't know. Do we want to vote on this? What do we think? All right,
I feel like we're going to be too split.
All right. We'll try it anyway. Hand up for Cup. Mike? Okay. Hand up for JT. I think that was a delayed Cooper Cup for Dante. All right. So no one for JT. Hands up for Devontae. All right, so it looks like we're 2-2. We're on Devontae and we're on Cup here. But
so by default, it's Austin Eckler.
It's Austin Eckler. No, by default, that means that the split goes to whoever the people vote for, right? Whoever the people vote for.
Derrick Henry.
Click the link in the description. Vote on this poll. All right, moving on to the next one. What do we got, Kyle?
An easy one.
ROTY, Rookie of the Year. All right, go ahead. Give me arguments.
I want to start this one out. I don't have.
I could go into Jamar Chase again if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
Let Mike take the lead.
Hey, listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you guys dig into Jamar Chase a little bit. I don't think there's much of an argument here. I mean, the other two guys you're looking at had outstanding seasons, and I will stick with my statement after watching a full season of football that I still believe Waddle is a better receiver than Jamar Chase. I think he's more skilled. Obviously, fantasy, whatever you want to talk about, didn't show up as much, but I think Waddle is going to take huge strides next year, and I would draft Waddle over Jamar Chase for next season, and I'll leave it at that.
Wow.
That's a
all
bold
right.
claim.
Just because we've already heard about Jamar, I'm willing to pose this other question. Where would you like to see, other than the team he's on now, what team do you think would be better suited with Devontae Smith?
Do you mean the Dolphins or the Bengals?
Well, yeah. Which team do you think? I mean, I feel like it's the Bengals, obviously.
Bengals, yeah.
I'd just pass a lot more. But who would you prefer on that offense?
I would probably go the Dolphins, to be honest.
I'm leaning Dolphins too for Devontae Smith.
Because, I mean, they've got too many weapons. They're set. Wide receiver wise. I mean, you got T. Higgins.
If you were to
swap them, yeah. That's what
yeah. I mean, well, still, like, I don't know. Like, you still got those two players that soak up a lot of touches. I mean, that doesn't. And, I don't know. Devontae Smith. It's hard to say because, like, Jalen Hurts, although he's a good player, he's not a necessarily good quarterback.
Oh, don't get Kyle going.
Oh,
come on.
So
that's good.
No. I mean, listen. I said he's a good player. He's a good player because he can get the rushing yards too. But in terms of like, I mean, outside of maybe you can make a case for like Tua being on the same level, but I'm easily taking Burrow, and I'm easily taking. Well, I'm not. I don't know about Ben, but I take Ben like maybe 2 years ago.
So I would say Bengals only because you look at if Jamar Chase wasn't on that team, I think T. Higgins explodes even more.
Yeah.
But you look at what Tyler Boyd did this year. He was wide receiver, I think, 29 PPR or 30 in PPR, wide receiver 3. The guy had a really good year for where his ADP was. So I'm saying if you took Jamar Chase out, you're not going to get his production from Devonta Smith. I think he's a better receiver than Smith. But I think if you swap Smith out for Waddle, I think the drop-off is even worse because Waddle this year, although they did try to feed him, especially towards the end of the year, the guy is just incredibly talented. He did most of the stuff on his own. And we're speaking to Zach here, who is a big-time Dolphins fan or at least has some stock in them. And I know he was watching the games more than all of us this year. But I know Waddle has that impact where he's Tyreek Hill freaky. You give him the ball in space, let him do his thing. And he creates that separation. So I don't think Smith is on either of their levels. But I think if you were to get more production out of him, I think even if he went to Miami and was the number 1, I think he would still have better stats with the Bengals and what Joe Burrow is doing this year with them.
Excuse me. I personally put Devontae Smith on the Dolphins just because of Tua. That's really the only reason. I think that Tua is more – I don't know. This is hard to say. I think that the chemistry would inevitably be better with Tua than it would be with Joe Burrow just because they've played together before. And I think that that's what we see with Jalen Waddle in terms of him and Tua, because anytime Tua is panicked, he dumps it off to Waddle anytime. So I think that that's kind of why I lean. That's kind of why I lean towards. Also, Dante, I sent this to Kyle.
This is the first time we're ever doing this.
You need to see
This is the first time we're ever doing
All right,
this.
look at Jalen Hurts in his first 19 starts. He's more less turnovers than Joe Burrow, more touchdowns than Kyler Murray and Andrew Luck. I don't know what else to tell you, man.
You know what's a big difference?
Like I said, good player.
You know what's a big difference? If you pull
Let me ask you.
That's the kicker.
If you pull up the what, Mike? Sorry.
The win-loss record. That's probably your kicker.
Wins aren't a quarterback stat.
They aren't.
But also, you have to add in
of blame, at least. Blame, I could say.
Where are the rushing yards? Where can I find rushing yards?
See, and the other thing is, I mean, Jalen Hurts has been throwing to literal traffic cones for the last 2 years. Like he has no one on his receiving core, and I mean, Kyler has Hopkins, and I mean, Joe Burrow has Chase, and he had Higgins last year, and Tyler Boyd. Like, come on, man.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. You want Dallas Goedert over Jamar Chase?
Oh man.
I'm saying I'd be happy with either.
Say it. Say it.
Kick this guy off the show. Get him out of here.
Say it.
Happy with either.
All right.
All right.
All consensus
Going back
Jamar
to this
Chase.
though.
Yeah.
Wait. Can I just one more
say
thing.
what you need to?
Out of all these, like including Najee, because I feel like we should at least say something about Najee.
We do.
And I'll guess I'll start it off. Out of all these players, I would take Najee first in a draft, just because. I mean, I think we can all agree that wide receivers are stacked, and for Najee and the position that he's in, I mean, there's no one even close to interrupting his workload, and he still gets a little bit of receiving work. I mean, he's had games where he's had over 5 receptions or around 5, but it's mainly just the fact that, and it's honestly, it's not even like his performance. It's the fact that for me, if you're on the field, that's all I need you to do. Like, because I know you'll get the touches. I need you to be on the field, and that's the biggest thing for me. Is
Yeah,
with Najee.
I think there's something to be said about how Najee drafting right now for 2022. I'm personally drafting Najee first or before these guys, and then it's Jamar, and then probably, I mean, you can get Waddle 10 spots later after Jamar, and that's just in the wide receiver position, and you'll probably be very happy with Waddle as your starting receiver. So to say like that kind of leap with like receiver depth and all that is kind of stacked. And I could see why Najee could get that, but then you're getting into the whole like NFL MVP thing. Like, why do quarterbacks keep winning it? Because it's such heavily weighted. So we're going the right way here, and we're choosing the receiver over the running back for fantasy.
Agreed.
I think the biggest hindrance on Najee Harris is Matt Canada. They get rid of him. They get a good OC, a brand new quarterback in there. The man was just shy of 300 points this year. He finishes PPR running back 3. That's without McCaffrey having a full season, without Henry, without DeAndre Swift having a full season. So he would have been right around there anyways. So, I mean, I'm excited for him. They're definitely got to do something with the OC there and get a new QB. I'm definitely excited to see him go in the first round next year for sure.
Final question before we end this.
Go ahead.
Because we can talk rookies all day. Who would be your fourth? If you were to add a fourth to this graphic, fourth rookie.
Are we sticking with offense?
Because it's fantasy, yes.
Okay.
Fantasy rookie of the year.
Okay. That's a hard one.
I know mine.
Off the top of my head, I can't really get any to come to mind.
All right, I'll start with
mine.
Mine. Oh, you can go Devontae, Dante. I'm going Amon-Ra St. Brown. And part of it is because I'm a Lions fan. But secondly, it's because I truly think he won plenty of teams' fantasy championships. And that's kind of what it's all about. You picked him off on the waivers 6 weeks ago, and he scored. I think he was the highest scorer among fantasy playoffs. And that's kind of what you look for. Not to say you weren't disappointed if you owned him at any other point during the season. So for me in Dynasty, it was great to not come in last with Amon-Ra on my lineup. But other than that, I think he gets my fourth nod because the only other person I'd think of is Kyle Pitts. And I wasn't a fan because tight ends sucked this year.
Right.
That was going to be my vote.
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
See, and I could definitely see him as a potential fourth there. And Amon-Ra St. Brown's another one. That's a great choice to put here. Someone I thought would have been here by the end of the year is Rondale Moore. And he was a rookie bust this year, if you want to call it that. He came in, they said that they were going to utilize him, and then even Hopkins goes down, and he still didn't have that role with the Cardinals. I thought he would have been here, which is just ironic. I'm thinking about it now, and he's not. And I can't really add someone to this list, but I could add a bust. So that's my rookie bust this year, Rondale Moore.
I think I think for Kyle Pitts, he's going to be the first guy I mentioned. I have one second one I just want to say. I think he realistically was about 3 or 4 touchdowns away from being like in this conversation very, very clearly, because where you drafted him, you were expecting pretty big things, admittedly, but I think for him, he broke 1,000 yards. Like, that's a pretty huge accomplishment for a rookie tight end. He had 66 receptions and he had 1 receiving touchdown. Like, if you put him in the range of, I don't even know, say Dalton Schultz. Okay. Dalton Schultz had 6 touchdowns. Pat Freiermuth had 7 touchdowns. Like, you put him somewhere in that range, that tacks on 36 extra fantasy points. Like, you're looking at a really decent season overall from him. I can have it right here, how many he finished with.
Yeah, to only get 1 touchdown. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, he was at 173. So you add in that 36 and he's at 209, and that makes him tight end 3. And you're thrilled with him.
Yeah, he's
So But the other guy I wanted to mention real quick, and he wasn't consistent enough to be in this conversation, I think, for the rookie of the year. But if you went rookie of the second half-ish, kind of, is Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore was awesome this year. He's really kind of built a rapport with Zach Wilson. You know, Zach Wilson likes to dump off because he's either terrified or he's getting pressured. So, you know, he's always looking for that short drop pass or even down the field. He stretched the field a little bit with Moore this year, and Moore was great. So, personally, if I could, I would go get him in Dynasty because I like what's in store for him for the future.
I think Moore had.
You would do him over the other rookie?
Who's that?
Michael Carter?
Yeah.
Personally, yes.
Okay.
I think Moore had 20 fantasy points with 4 different quarterbacks.
QB proof. I think, Dante, just to go back to what you said about Carter, I think that what Moore does is more sustainable than what Carter does, and I don't think Carter showed it in big enough flashes this year like Moore did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just asking. I mean, I knew Michael Carter had a couple good weeks where he was like, he was really like, he was getting like around 20 a week. So I wasn't sure if he, I know Elijah was definitely like the better player in that aspect, but I wasn't sure if Michael Carter had anything close to that.
Yeah, and one more name off the top of my head I'm thinking of. If Melvin Gordon was not on the Broncos, Javonte Williams would be on this list as well. He had an unbelievable season for when he had the ball in his hands. He did great things. He actually made himself a viable starter. And basically, I would say the last 3 quarters of the fantasy season this year. So, like, if he ever had a full tilt in that backfield with no Melvin Gordon, I think there would be 4 pictures on this graphic right here. So that's another name I can throw.
Is this Gordon's contract year?
It is. It is. And we actually did a video on that earlier in the season. We talked about, like, he's on his contract year. It could be a potential trade coming up. He might be going. We were talking about some teams where he might go. So, I mean, again, the offseason this year will be interesting. Are they going to keep him around? We'll see, you know.
Definitely.
If Gordon's gone, this is going to be a really hot take. If Gordon's gone, I'm going to put Javonte as a top 10 RB by the end of the season next year.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong by that.
I like that.
I like that for sure. All right, let's wrap up Rookie of the Year here. I think we're pretty unanimous on Jamar. I'll give my token vote to my love, Jalen Waddle here. But you know, you guys can tell us who you think. And we're looking at this year specifically. So vote down below. Okay, click that link, vote. And let's move on to our last one here.
This year being 2022, so Amon-Ra St. Brown gets the vote.
Just for the last week. That's all that counts. All right, the last one is all the marbles, I guess. The fantasy MVP. Who is the most valuable player in fantasy football 2021-2022? Who wants to take it?
Oh, man. You know, I'll start this one off. Everybody's going to say Cooper Kupp. I'm going to switch lanes here, okay? I'm going to look at our draft, the one that we were a part of this year. I'm going to say Josh Allen. You know, number 2 scorer in fantasy this year, right behind Cooper Kupp. As I'm looking at it here, about 30 more points than the next quarterback on the list, which was ironically Justin Herbert, depending on your scoring, obviously. And I'd say he's the MVP. He wasn't in most leagues even considered being drafted in the top 4 or 5 QBs. He was outside of that range. You had a lot of guys going early this year. Even Lamar Jackson was going early this year. And you could even throw up, was on the verge of a bust from what people expected from him. Not that he was at all, but from what people expected of him. And of course, he missed time and stuff like that. But I'm giving it to Josh Allen. What he did this year was fantastic. He absolutely balled out with that team. And I'm going to go ahead for his ADP and give it to Josh Allen there.
Go ahead. One of you guys take it. I'm not doing it.
This is tough, man. I can't, like, Because I want to go Cup, to be honest with you. I want to go Cup, but I think because of like the only thing that's stopping me from Cup is like the position. Like I feel like in terms of wide receivers, there's just so much more depth that obviously Cup is about to break 2 records. So I mean, you're getting great value, and that's MVP like stats. But in terms of Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he's number 1 in rushing yards, 18 touchdowns. I mean, in a position that's so scarce, especially this year with the amount of injuries that we had, to be able to rely on Jonathan Taylor throughout that season, that's the only reason why I would want to give the nod to JT. But part of me wants to give it to Cup just for the overall consistency, including playoffs. And yeah, that's me being salty still about the semifinals, but yeah, that's where I can't even give an answer yet. But that's what I'm thinking about either player. So
I'm gonna vote Cup, and I think what wins it for me is that he is the highest scoring fantasy player in PPR. If you play in 4-point touchdown for quarterbacks, so he's number 1 above every quarterback. And the next skill position is Jonathan Taylor, but Cup had 50 more points than him. And then he had 80 more points than the next receiver. So above Devontae Adams, he had 80 more fantasy points on the season. That's a score. That's a weekly score of a fantasy team, like an entire roster. On a bad week, but still, that's a lot. That's a lot of points. That's what we've said several times. That's record-breaking points. He's just been dominant. And typically, this award goes to a running back, because running backs dominate this league, especially if they receive the ball a lot, like Austin Eckler. But Cup, I'm giving it to him.
I'm going to say something stupid. I think Mark Andrews should partially have a vote in this.
Oh, definitely.
Just because tight end is such a crappy position.
I'm with you.
Brutally volatile. It goes up and down every year. And where you were getting Mark Andrews this year, if I recall, I want to say he was maybe 6th round-ish, maybe 5th, somewhere in there. I don't have his ADP offhand right now, but I mean, he smashed expectations. I mean, some people, and I'm throwing shade at you with this, Kyle, took Travis Kelce in the first round, and Mark Andrews finished 40 fantasy points ahead of Kelce, and you were getting a 6th-round discount on him. Kyle, go ahead. Did you find it?
Yeah, he was the tight end 5 going in the 4th round.
Okay, 4th round. All right. But, I mean, he almost never had a bust of a week. He did score under 10 4 times. I'll admit that. He went for 5 in week 1. He went for 6 against Cincinnati, 9. But, like, the weeks that he hit. Like, 15 was his lowest, 17. He had a week of 41. I mean, he had a 35, a 28. Like, he crushed it this season. And he was quarterback proof too. I mean, he's great with Lamar, obviously, but he had Tyler Huntley at one point. And I mean, I swear Trace McSorley might have even been in there at some point or another. Maybe RG3 came back from the dead. I don't know. But like he was quarterback proof. So I mean, I'd like to just kind of give him a tip of the hat a little bit, and I think he is a little deserving. Obviously, he didn't score the most points, but he provided you reliability at a position that was really hard to find a reliable option at. So, with that being said, Cooper Kupp is my answer. He's just nuts. I just looked at some of his stats. He's got 2, maybe 3 more touchdowns than Devontae Adams. He's got about 400 more receiving yards. He's got about 25 more receptions than Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams is the gold standard. So I can't even imagine what that makes Cooper Kupp. So he's my vote for the fantasy MVP. So anything else you guys want to add to that discussion?
No, that about settles it.
I think so. I think, honestly, this might have been our easiest one of the night.
Oh, definitely.
Now, if you were to add, I know we've had 2 in Josh Allen and Mark Andrews. If you were to add a 5th, or actually, ignore that, a fantasy playoffs MVP.
Ooh.
Oh.
How much did you say Eckler just gave you?
Oh, that was here. I'll give you the overall stats for the playoffs, which were weeks 15 to 16. Here, I'll beam this up. These are the fantasy leaders among all. I don't know if you guys can see that. I hope you can.
Shout out Fantasy Pros.
Fantasy pros. These are the leaders in scoring, PPR, weeks 15 to 17. You got Joe Burrow, Amon-Ra, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews, Josh Allen, Chase, Mahomes, Prescott, Debo, Rodgers, Herbert. I would assume your playoffs MVP would be in the top 12, but if you want to pick Dalton,
I would. So if you look at that list there, you look at Joe Burrow. You weren't expecting Joe Burrow to be up there above Mahomes, Prescott, Rodgers. He wasn't even in the conversation with them to start the year. So that's probably a guy going into the playoffs that you had high hopes for because he had an outstanding season. But I like even seeing this right here, I'm a little bit shocked. I would have never started Joe Burrow over Mahomes, Dak, Rodgers in the playoffs or Josh Allen. So that I would say is my playoff MVP. I think the stat alone shows it. That's just unbelievable. Imagine going into a matchup against a guy like Mahomes or Dak, and he outperforms them. That basically guarantees you a win for most matchups. So I'm going Burrow. I think that's outstanding. I didn't even see the stat until now. So
I will go with a guy who is a little lower down on this list.
I
He's
know
number
who it is.
14, Kyle.
Oh,
There he is.
I would have thought a little differently.
I think it's got to be, personally, I think it's got to be Rashad Penny. Because if you were in the mess that was COVID-19 for the last 3 weeks, you lost a running back, guaranteed, because everybody did. I mean, mine wasn't COVID. I lost Darrell Henderson. I know he'd kind of been out of favor, but he was starting to work his way back in. And
Lost
Rashad
Eckler.
Penny was a guy that you could have scooped up off of waivers, completely scot-free, and he balled for the last couple weeks here. I know he comes in at 58.4 because I don't think he did too much, if my memory serves me right, in week 15. But I mean, I think week 16, he was up at 19 points. I think he had 19.5. Yeah, he did. And then week 17, he had 32.5. Like that's league winner stuff right there. Obviously, I know Amon-Ra and Jamar and Joe Burrow had huge games, but like that's big from a running back because that's a position that you cannot find scarcity or that you cannot find depth at this late in the season. So that's going to be my guy, the MVP of the playoffs.
My heart wants me to say Amon-Ra. But
You got
realistically,
that's your man's. Go ahead.
That's my man's. I already hyped him up. You picked him up on waivers 3 weeks ago, probably a week before Rashad Penny, and he consistently won you 4 or 5 games in a row. I'm gonna go Mark Andrews though, just because you're starting Mark Andrews. Where's the next guy on this list? These two down here. You're
probably Schultz.
Yeah. Your opponent, you're already at an insane advantage starting Mark Andrews. And because of that and what he gave you as the 5th highest scorer throughout the playoffs, that's what you look for. Because if he didn't have Amon-Ra, you could have had Adams. You could have had Kupp. You could have had Jamar Chase. If you didn't have Burrow, you had Josh Allen. You had Mahomes.
Yep.
If you had Andrews, you're playing. Yeah. So for me, I'm going Andrews.
I like that one.
Just slightly above Amon-Ra.
Definitely. Like
Does your tight end 1 off the board change next year for the first year ever?
Ooh, man.
I think it just tells me
I'm
I'm
still
going
tight
Kelsey.
end.
I'm still going Kelsey.
Okay.
I want to say that I would lean George Kittle because I really liked what I saw from him this season, but I don't know. It wasn't consistent enough. I think I'm
Injuries.
just trying to be trendy.
It's a hard one. I did go Kelsey myself first round this year, and I didn't regret it at all. It was a great pick. Other guys that I was looking at that like 6, 7, 8 spot was like Barkley and just a bunch of mess. No one that
missed
would
out
have.
on the Barkley experience this year. That was a win.
Yeah. Yeah, we I don't remember who ended up getting him in our draft, but
That's Colin.
he got, unfortunately, our friend Colin got stuck with him this year. It was a trap pick for everybody. He was a first rounder, did nothing. So, but yeah, I don't know. The tight end man next year, it's something that I think finally actually has to be thought about after all these years. I think you have to at least think about it this year. So
I think
We can
this
only
year
hope.
taught me to ignore them all and pick up Gerald Everett. Actually, I drafted Gerald this year. But yeah,
I
just pick up
picked up Schultz. That was incredible.
Oh, Schultz, man, what a surprise!
or
Yeah.
Dawson Knox was a waiver.
Absolutely. Dawson
Knox.
Knox was great.
Lots of sneaky tight ends, lots of sneaky ones. So
Oh, man. All right, fellas, should we wrap it up here?
I think
Yeah.
we shall.
I think we've covered a lot tonight.
Do we have an
actually
MVP? Did
eclipsed-
we come to a conclusion? Is it
We
Cup?
did. I think we all voted Cup here.
Cooper Cup, yeah, it's hard to argue.
Yeah.
Insane year.
Well, regardless, remember that you guys can vote down below. We're gonna have a poll up for all 5 of our different superlatives that we've had here, and we're looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say because we aim to please. We aim to see what you guys like and what you guys think, and we try to cater our content towards that. So, with that being said, I think that's all we got. Any last words?
All set.
Uh,
Let us know what you guys think.
Use code first seed on Underdog. Get some-
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me run through that
Get
spiel
a
again.
great bonus.
Yeah, use code First Seed. You guys can log on to Underdog Sports. You can sign up now if you use First Seed, all caps, FIRSTSEED. You'll get a free 100% deposit match when you when you deposit up to $100. For some of you hooligans, it might be a donation, and that's only on your first deposit. So use that when you sign up for Underdog.
And if daily fantasy is not your game, they've got prop picks, depending on which state you're in, which we're looking to do some content on, and
absolutely
just win you some playoff money as well as some. After
and
your
if you're missing
regular season,
if you're missing fantasy football, they have a gauntlet right now that you can get into. That's just for playoff fantasy. So that's big time. I'm looking forward to getting into that. I'm waiting for this week's games to play out, but I'm gonna hop right in that. So, all right, guys, let's get out of here. Let's wrap this up. That's all for us. We will hopefully see you guys again soon with some more, maybe not necessarily fantasy content, but with some more football content. We are.
Maybe we'll chat our Super Bowl picks.
I think so. I think that'd be a good call. We're football fans just as much as we're fantasy fans. So, all right, guys, checking out. Until our next one, Mike, Dante, Kyle, and Zach. We'll see you guys.